Welcome back to another episode of Black Facts. Today, I am so happy to have Gabriel Maldonado. He is a leader in the LGBTQ plus community as well as the HIV community. And his focused work is on health disparities or reducing health disparities. Gabe co founded TruEvolution 15 years ago. And he's been doing phenomenal work in providing HIV, STI prevention care and services. And they've also just recently started to add additional services, mental health services, emergency housing services. And he is now leading his organization, the 20 million housing project, building housing project called Project Legacy. I'm so excited that, you're spearheading this and you're providing this wonderful, amazing housing project in the Inland Empire in California. So, welcome, Gabe. I'm so happy to have you on.
Thank you, Michelle. Appreciate you for having me.
So, I wanted to talk to you. This episode I'm titling Raising Pride. And the reason why I'm doing so is because I have several friends, acquaintances, Black parents, and they have talked about how they're struggling as far as how they can engage their teenagers in conversations, especially if they believe that they're a part of the LGBTQ plus community. So I wanted to have you on so you can, you know, educate us all. Let's start out by, can you please explain or break down what does LGBTQ plus stand for?
Well, first, thank you for having me. The LGBTQ and you put a plus in it really describes and gives visibility to the variety of different identities that are in the LGBT community. So, the first is lesbian, which I know is a term that I'm sure your viewers know. Gay, which is a term that it sort of has become a more broader term to refer to different folks, but is often referred to as gay men, typically tend to assume that title. Bisexual, which is another one I'm sure your viewers are familiar with. Transgender, which I know over in the last recent years has become a much more educated topic for folks in the community. And then there are those that do not assign themselves to any gender. The associations that come with being a man and the associations that come with being a woman oftentimes do not speak to anyone's lived experience, how they want to behave, how they want to perform, how they want to show up in the world. And they really don't affirm either gender as their own identity. And so those folks refer to themselves as non-binary. Gender non-conforming is another term that has been used. And those folks are those that live without a gender or live within any gender binary.
Okay, wow. Okay. So, talk to me then about what the difference is between sexual orientation and gender identity. I know that that has been a huge topic of conversation.
Yeah. So gender identity is who you are. Okay. And historically, we have been taught that gender, which is assigned at birth, is based on your genitalia, what is in between your legs. And we know even from a physiological, biological perspective, there are individuals who are not born with neither a clear penis or a vagina either. And so there's even a biological frame of reference for those that don't physiologically even show up in that binary. But I think if you go even beyond that, there's individuals who's in their minds. And that's where we've tried to reassign where the gender is located. It's not between your legs, it's between your ears. It's within your mind, it's your psychology, it's how you see yourself and how you see your body, how you see your relationship with others, and how your relationship shows up. So gender occurs within the mind. And if you can begin there as your starting place, if that can be your starting place, then that opens up for folks that have a variety of genders that may not necessarily correlate with their genitalia. So gender is here. Okay, it is who you are. Sexuality is what you like, what you're connected to, what you're drawn to. And I say like, and oftentimes we reduce like down to just this primordial sexual
Right.
attraction. Who I want to have sex with, and that's my sexuality, is where my
Mhm.
raw animalism is drawn to. And it's
Mhm.
so much more deeper than that. And actually, to hold sexuality in that sort of place is really toxic, actually. And so to go beyond sexuality, to say, who are you connected to? Who are you drawn to? Who does your spirit, your soul find itself being connected to? Not just your sexual attraction, but also a deeper connection than that. And that's what gives birth and gives life to people affirming that they are part of the LGBT community, that they do not operate in the heterosexual context, and that they have a desire for other forms of genders, other than the one society tells them. So that's where sexuality sits, is within what you're connected to and what you like.
Okay. Wow. Okay. You're breaking everything down and I really appreciate it. Now let's talk about pronouns. Can you
There's a lot.
explain? Yeah, there are a lot of them.
Yeah.
So I know in particular, there's a young lady that I know, and well, I've already misspoken
Right?
because
Exactly. No, I'll be right with you. I'll be right with
I've
you.
already misspoken
Yeah.
because they go by they.
Right.
That's their pronoun.
That's their pronoun.
Right.
Yes.
So can you explain that? Because I know, being an older Black woman myself,
Yeah.
I want to be appropriate, right? I want to be respectful. And especially if I were speaking to my child, I want to be supportive. I want to be able to understand. Can you
Yeah.
explain how we can be supportive and respectful in that way as well? As far as, should we ask, how do you want to be, acknowledged?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, that's the answer. I mean, I think sometimes, and I know parents, you want to just know, right? You want to approach the situation in which your child is not educating you. You want to be the authority. You want to know what to say and how to say it. You're saying it right the first time, and you're in control of the situation, right? That's what you're looking for. And so you're trying to figure out how to remain in control. If you do not come from the background or the context of naturally understanding the LGBT community, where you can give your child wisdom and knowledge on it, as I will be able to,
Right.
whether my child ends up being heterosexual or a member of the LGBT community, I will be equipped to teach them about the LGBT community. And so
Right.
if you don't come from that background and that frame of reference, your biggest teacher is going to be your child. And that same level of humility that one approaches a teacher is the same level of humility one must approach their child. And that's
Mm.
going to be a very awkward, uncomfortable, unusual disposition for a parent. I get it. My mother is a Black woman. I was raised by Black matriarchs. Okay, my mom don't play that. And I was raised real old school. So I get it, But you made a reference in my introduction and you said co-founder. I founded my organization when I was 18 years old. And so I didn't have
Wow.
nothing on nothing. And so my co-founder was my mother. And she was the person that supported me, enabled me, resourced me. She's also the one that taught me about empathy and kindness and compassion and grace. She's also a Christian woman, a real Christian woman. And her mother, my grandmother, is a real Christian woman. She was just telling me earlier about 2 Timothy 3:1-5. I need to read that later today. So I come from a very Christian, religious, Black
Mhm.
matriarch primarily household. And even my mother and my grandmother, they have been the ones to teach me about having humility to humanize other people, no matter what context they come from. And I've been able to apply that lessons in my own development in the LGBT community.
No, I appreciate you saying that, and I appreciate you sharing a little bit about, your background and your mother. So, how was it for you? Like you said, coming from, a matriarch background with a Black mom. How was it for you when you came out?
The good thing is that my family did not meet me with any hostility. And I think that I had the fortune of having a grandfather from the South Bronx who's a very, he's the man of the house.
Mhm.
He's the man of the house, right? And he sets the tone, although we are a matriarchal home, there's respect and deference given to the man of the home, right? So my grandfather set the tone of the energy, and he was protected growing up by his very flamboyant older gay cousin who protected him, looked out for him, showed him the streets, showed him how to fight, because, the gays in the Bronx don't play, okay? You're going to squab with them gays. And my grandfather was a beneficiary of the compassion and the love and the support of a older gay cousin. And so I think that opened up his sense of sympathy and empathy and understanding that poured over into my grandmother. That is how my mother was raised. And so I was greeted with an amazing amount of understanding. In fact, my mother and my grandmother, when my mother told my grandmother that I came out, I heard my grandmother on the phone in the background. She says, "Oh, finally, we were just waiting on you." And I laughed, and that was warm. And my grandfather's rubber stamped that, and they humanized me right off the bat. Now let's go to Act Two, which is my father, who is Latino. Okay,
Okay.
that's also another very
Machismo.
machismo culture.
Mm-hmm.
He is Catholic, and I was raised, and it was a large Catholic upbringing in my upbringing. So that's different context. And he told me that I was going to hell. Now, at the time that I came out, I had an organization. I had graduated my bachelor's. I was in my master's program. I paid my own way. I paid my own life. You know, I had been on my own since I was like 17, 18. I raised myself. So, I mean, I didn't really feel this sort of like cling to my father's opinion. You know, I wanted to make him happy and proud, but a part of me was like, I'm going home. Let me get in the car. I don't have to put up with this, you know, and that was the other part of it. But I think with that ability to still be able to sit in myself and not retreat, it allowed me to confront my father with my identity and have an intelligent, grown, sophisticated conversation with him from a less emotional place to really get him and me to understand him and us to come to a consensus. And you fast forward, you know, nearly 10 years later, I don't think my father would miss my wedding. And, you know, I think he just wants me to get married to anyone at this point and have kids so he can have grandchildren. I mean, at this point, he don't really care. He just wants grandchildren more than he cares who I marry at this point. So that's a beautiful circle moment, even with someone who came out quite hostile to my coming out.
Well, you mentioned too earlier, I love how you talked about, since we don't know, right? As parents, we may not be coming from, we don't know about the LGBTQ plus community, right? So humble ourselves and allow our children to educate us. I really liked how you stated that, and then how you also shared the example of your mother being there and being supportive of you. So how do you do that? How do you, like you said, we're used to being the ones in control and the ones
Yeah.
educating and helping rear our children, right? And you have this protective instinct, right? You don't want anything or anyone to harm or hurt them. So how do you put those defenses down and say, okay, let me hear and understand from you, when they don't really have a lot of lived experience and I'm not sure that they really understand it
They
themselves.
don't. No, they don't. They do not. So you're not wrong. They
Okay.
do not. There is also a pathway that a lot of LGBT youth go through who do not have the support, who do not have the community, do not have the teaching tools, and they stumble along their journey. And they do run into and clash into some of the negative lived experiences that your viewers, your parents, are afraid that their youth are going to experience. So let me give that validity to that does happen, and that is a reality. Okay, so that's true. However, you know, I don't think it's about putting your defenses down. I think it really is two things. One is you need to have a different frame of reference. You know, you don't have a frame of reference, or you may not have a strong frame of reference of what it means to be queer and successful and happy and aligned and power focused and spiritual and godly and Christian. I know some real devout, openly queer, very successful Christians. And they up in that word more than they're up in the word again than they're those who condemn them. Can give you Bible references and really live and practice in a strong, morally righteous way. Some of them do not operate from a Judeo-Christian framework. Some of them do. But I think really equipping and acknowledging yourself with the various kinds of lived experiences and testimonies and stories of that, and it helps you begin to see all the possibilities. And to be honest with you, it's no different than your straight son or daughter. They have every bit of chance of going down the wrong path, the right path, marrying the right woman, marrying the wrong man, marrying the
Right.
wrong woman, in the wrong situation, getting on drugs, getting on this, not finishing school, getting up in jail, getting shot by the police. You know, I mean, like, all of these things are realities for all of us. And
Right.
the difference about whether an LGBT person succeeds or not really is in your ability and your capacity to love and to have empathy. That is the determining factor. It is really you that is going to lead a lot of the initial trajectory. And then along the way, organizations and mentors and other forms of the community, we come to the aid of the LGBT folks who may not have had all the love and support they needed. But really, where they begin, their starting place begins with you.
Okay. As a parent, I want to start from a place of love, right? So, should I be looking for resources if I do have, if my child does come out? Should I look for resources? Should I get us in family therapy?
Yeah.
What should I
Well,
do?
well, therapy would denote that there is a challenge or a
Right.
concern with overcoming and getting through some of the mental processes that your child may have, that your child may not. Your child may be quite coming out quite clear about who they are, right? Because they're real bold these days. So
Right.
you may not have that issue with your child. You may need some therapy. So that's true. You may need to
No,
get
yeah.
therapy on your
Yes.
own to deal
Right.
with your own
Okay.
issues, because you are going to have to unlearn a great deal of socialization and cultural context and religious history that you have programmed inside of you, hardwired in your brain since the
Mhm.
moment you were born. You were taught how to be a certain way, and you were trained that you're supposed to imprint that on the next generation. And we've changed. It's not the reality anymore. You got to come up with a different souffle recipe. It's not the same souffle. They want different things in that recipe. So my recommendation to any parent of a beginning place with their child is to find them an appropriate and trusted mentor who is in the community, a mentor for you and a mentor for them. You need to have a direct connection with someone who is living out the lived experience that you want to support your child with. There are gay athletes. Maybe your child is an athlete, but they're a member of the LGBT community. That's going to be a unique challenge that they're going to have to experience. So finding a successful athlete who's also a member of the LGBT community, and trust me, it's not that hard to find mentors or those that are queer that are willing to support and mentor youth. So I would really say to tap your networks, post on social media, see if you can figure out people that are already in your network that are doing really dope stuff, that are members of the LGBT community. And that should be someone that should be a trusted advisor for you, and someone that could be a trusted advisor that your son, daughter, or sib, child should go to in time. I think that's the most valuable thing. And obviously, I'd say know where your nearest LGBT center or LGBT resources, just in case special services may be needed. But a good starting place is just to have a mentor and a guide.
Okay. I like that. I appreciate that advice. So, same again, my child, we have this conversation. I'm like, okay, as parents, we often do, we want to go run and tell somebody because, right? We're like, oh, what do I do? We say something to somebody in the family, and then it becomes a thing. So, would you advise that we just kind of talk to our child and figure out how they would like to, or if they want to, share
Yes.
the rest of the family?
Yes. I mean, it is not your personal business. I mean, I love our people, but a lot of times we don't want to air out dirty laundry unless it's not our own, unless it's someone else's. We don't have a problem calling up the auntie and calling up the sister girl to tell her what's going on. But how would you feel if your son or daughter wanted to vent to another family member about issues happening in your marriage, or issues that were happening? I saw daddy walking out with another lady. You wouldn't want that gossiped around. What if your child wanted to share that with someone because they wanted counsel on it? You wouldn't appreciate that level of private business being shared, even if it was well intended that the person needed to seek counsel. So I think in the same vein, you should hold that same coven over the private information that you know about your child and that your child may share with you. And it is your child's responsibility to assert when they want to share and how and with whom. But if you are looking for counsel, if that's your reason and your motivation, then you need to follow what I had mentioned. My first suggestion is to find that trusted mentor.
Yeah.
Be very thoughtful about the circle that you're trying to get information from. And I would probably steer away from just wanting to vent, because I think that's often what it is. It's really not seeking information, because the person you're calling, you know darn well, is not going to really
Yeah.
know. You're
Right.
calling to kiki. You're calling to
Right.
vent. You're calling to release energy, and that is also not healthy, and that is also can be toxic behavior. And so you really want to have designated individuals, a trusted circle set that is there to give you guidance and support. That is who you should be trusting information to. And it may look like a family member, but it could look like a professional. It could look like a friend outside of the nucleus network. Um, but it just needs to be trusted, and it needs to be agreed upon by everyone in the family.
Okay. Is there any other words of wisdom or guidance? You've shared a lot. I mean, some really good things. I really like with you starting out talking about, just coming from a place of humility
Yeah.
and really trying to understand, your child and where they're coming from and how they want to be identified and respectful of that. And
Yeah.
then seeking out, mentorship, help, therapy individually if it's needed, so that you can have somebody trusted to speak about and to work through things. And I love the idea of identifying a local LGBTQ plus resource center
Yeah.
where you can not only educate yourself but hopefully find a mentor for yourself and your child at that space. Anything else that you can impart us with any other nuggets or words of wisdom?
If you let yourself, it's fun. I mean, I say that so simplistically, because once, it took years, by the way, but once my family worked through their own insecurities, their own religious sort of hesitations, their own cultural uncomfortabilities, once we got past that, for the last many years, they have been one of the biggest cheerleaders and also a beneficiary of the LGBT community. They've enjoyed our parties and the conversation. They appreciate my friends. They love the love and support. They've gotten connections and contacts. They've fell in love with the culture. They appreciate our artists. They enjoy the conversation. They invite my friends over. They really love seeing all the examples of positive LGBT reinforcement that I bring around them. And it became fun, and we appreciate it. And it's really a good time. And I just say to myself, man, if so many, particularly Black parents, could really find it deep within themselves to move beyond the rigidity of their own system of reality, their own cultural context, if you could just try to move past it and be inclusive of other ideas, you will really find enjoyment, not just tolerance, not just you're biting
Yes.
your tongue to accept, you're not just gritting through it for your child. You will actually begin to appreciate and value what the community brings to the culture. And I think that is a very beautiful place that you should be encouraged by and excited by. And you should feel passionate about wanting to learn about the LGBT community, because whether you believe it or not, we truly will enrich you, and we will support you and love you. And no one is more protective of straight people than their queer allies. We are also allies too. We are allies to you. And so we are very protective of our straight allies, and we love you all as well. And you can benefit from that love as well.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you, Gabe. It's been very educational for me and very enriching just to hear you speak so lovingly. You know, really everything that you said, I can just feel, the love, because you really want to ensure that people come together no matter what you believe, no matter how you identify, whatever your sexual orientation is. I can just tell you just want there to be a community where people can come together and love each other and understand each other and respect each other for what they bring, So thank you. Thank you for engaging in this conversation. Thank you for enlightening and educating us on, like I said, specifically, I wanted to really talk about as a Black parent, I have friends that, are struggling.
I
That's the
understand.
word they've used,
I
struggling,
understand. I
to try to
understand.
really, wrap their brains around what they can do to help and support, their child. They still love their child. But like you said, we come from a lived experience of whether it's religious based or just stuck in tradition about,
Yeah.
like you have to be female or male and only the two shall join, whatever frame of reference you're coming from. They've been struggling to try to really embrace and have conversations with their child. So I believe that all that you shared has been enriching and will be helpful for, not hopefully just for the parents that I know, but for others that are viewing this conversation. And I just appreciate you taking the time. I really do. I appreciate you taking the time to, share an open and have an open dialogue and an open perspective, and not being offended by anything that I may have said, because I
No.
don't, have all the answers.
Yeah.
I have friends, I have family in the LGBTQ plus community, and every day I learn something new, and I try to be open to apologizing when I stumbled, like earlier when I said, you know, this young lady, and then I
Yeah.
realized, no,
Them.
right.
Yeah.
So I think that's another thing too. If we're willing to be open and acknowledge what we don't know.
Yeah. I'll
And
say this. I'll say this last part on the pronouns because this is a big debate, a lot in the LGBT community. The only thing that really truly gets at the core of offending queer folks with misgendering or mispronouncing them is that you don't care, or is it's this
mm,
perspective that you don't care enough about them to want to try. The moment you're like, oh, my apologies, they, or you correct yourself, or you don't even have to. I've gotten to a place where I don't even apologize and stop. I will they, and I just restate myself, and they see that as an apology. They feel that correction. You didn't have to beg on the altar and bend over and bow to the the queer politics. You don't got to do all that. Just show respect and just show that you make an effort. And I promise you, folks will give you so much grace. You just come at them with the same level of grace.
thank you. Thank you, Gabe. And we're going to end on that note. Such a pleasure having Gabe here to talk to us about how we can raise our children with pride, those that are identifying the LGBTQ plus community. I so appreciate the information he shared with us and all the education he imparted with us. I hope those of you who are out there, whether you be a young person in the LGBT community or a parent that is wanting to understand or learn more about how they can support their child that has just recently come out and is a part of the LGBT community. I hope you've learned some information today, and I hope you're able to build on those learnings and come together, because we all need love, and we need to be able to understand one another and our different perspectives, and just grow and be better as a community. So I hope this episode has been helpful in understanding a little bit more about the LGBTQ plus community, especially for parents. I hope that you've been able to learn something that will help you be able to engage your teenager or your young person in a conversation, and it will lead to better understanding about their perspective and what they're going through, and hopefully allow for some healing and for you to just continue to love, your young person, and to grow and learn more about, like I said, what their experiences are, so that you can support them in the best way possible. I hope you all have enjoyed this episode of Black Facts. If you want more information about how you can engage the LGBT community or how you can learn more information, please look at the link below. I ask that you share and like this episode, and come join us so you can be a part of our Black Facts community and you can learn more and know the facts. Take care, everyone. Bye.